Okay, my name is Kevin OShea. I'm going to do my Reconstruction presentation on Otsego local schools grading policy, specifically the high school. So let me go ahead and get into this presentation real fast. So I had a lot of fun looking into this and reviewing our policy on grading. So just to kind of give you an overview of our grading policy, board policy 5421 basically spells out what the board's responsibility is in regards to grading. Kind of just an overview. The board is responsible for providing a system of grading student achievement to help students, teachers, and parents judge how well the students are achieving the district goals and objectives. So found it interesting that there's a paragraph in there about how the system should be reliable and accurate. Based off what I found in the high school handbook, I think that there's a lot of area there where I'm going to focus on my reconstruction part of this. The board is also responsible for, hiring the superintendent to develop the procedures for grading, and that gives the superintendent then gives the teachers or staff the responsibility to develop those clear goals for standards, kind of help students understand what behaviors are expected for achievement and what is needed to pass and fail, and how to provide opportunities to get that information and show progress towards the learning goals, and also provide students with the opportunity to assess their own achievement and area of difficulty. There's also a paragraph in there in the board policy about how our grading system should be continually reviewed by staff, students, and parents, which is another area that I think probably isn't being met that well. So I want to focus how that trickles down to the high school. So the board policy spells that out. If you look at the high school handbook, however, though, our grading language is simply a grading scale. So as you can see there, Brutus is letting you know that our grading scale basically is a 91 to 100 is an A, all the way down to a 60 and below being an F. However, when you look through our handbook, there are a lot of areas that are related to grading, though, such as honor roll, class rank. There's a section on makeup work, NHS, the qualifications to get into CCP, after school activities and athletic eligibility. Grading impacts all of these areas, which brings that question to access and equity into this, and the question of does our grading scale then create an unfair environment for many of our students, specifically students in low socioeconomic status or a special ed population, and also does just posting a grading scale, does this really accomplish what is spelled out in our board policy? It doesn't really talk much about, there's no language in there about homework, extra credit, zeros, and how those play a role or impact grades, or address any kind of grade inflation or inaccurate reporting as far as what grading is. So that's kind of deconstructing that policy a little bit. I think I spelled out here some areas that I think need to kind of be fixed. So number one, I think, our student handbook, which is board approved, it's vague. What do these letters mean? Is it behavior? Is it learning? Is it skill? What exactly does it reflect? What are the effects of missing work, bonus points, extra credit, punishment, points for homework, and things like that? How do those play into those letter grades? And does that give an accurate picture and accurate feedback to parents and stakeholders about student progress towards mastery, and the disproportionality of it? Obviously at 60 or below, we have kids who get anywhere from zeros to, all the way up to 60 in that F range, which could impact your grade and make it very difficult to recover from those. So some of the fixes I'm going to recommend and spell out here is just, separate report card into two categories. One grade for learning or improvement, and another grade for effort and behavior, and make those separate from one another. Also, eliminate the practice of using grades to reward and punish behavior, and develop a more fair and equitable grading interval. And I gave a couple examples there as well to balance those out. So what would a reconstructed policy look like to maybe be a little bit more fair, give kids more access and equity in the policy, and more fairly represent what students are? So I'm going to kind of show that I add a paragraph that's going to define what a grade is and what it measures. We're going to add some universal rules for teachers so grading can be implemented more consistently and universally across the subjects in our high school. and redo the grading scale so that's balanced and fair. So let's look at a reconstructed handbook language that I would propose. First, I'd add a paragraph for the purpose of grading. Why do we grade? I think it's important to communicate those expectations. The purpose for grading in this example is to communicate student mastery of our current high school students towards our local and state standards. We're committed to creating grades that are primarily based on proficiency of the learning standards. So that's what we're grading for and the purpose of it. We've created a grading policy, and that policy will be implemented across all grades and all subjects. It's to provide teachers with guidelines to ensure common understanding of required practices and procedures to assess and evaluate student mastery fairly, and then consistently and clearly communicate student mastery to all stakeholders. Further diving into that, we would outline a grading scale. So sorry, I clicked off that. Again, you can see we have the lowest score a student can receive would be a 50%. So again, more balanced. It also spells out what those letters mean. An A is mastery, all the way down to an F being unsatisfactory or no evidence of any standard achievement. It also spells out how to get those grades, that all grades will be based on accurate summative information, that we're not going to use formative assessments, homework, and practice work to report learning and grades. Grades are marked, the grades and marks, they should reflect achievement only and not effort, participation, attendance, lateness of work, or anything like that. Behavior is important, but it's going to be reported through a separate report card system and not tied to actual grades. We do have some guiding principles on here. I think it's important if we're talking about formative and the summative assessments that we should spell those out. So our formative assessments, again, are just student assignments. It's going to help them acquire the skills to achieve mastery, and it's going to help them be prepared for the summative assessments. Outline some expectations and responsibilities for teachers and students as well. What is important that teachers do versus what students do, so that teachers are, universally applying this in their class or their classrooms, and students also know what's expected of them in the grades. I also would spell out that it's summative assessments, and that's the final product. That's what we use to evaluate student mastery of the learning goals and standards, and also what teachers and students are expected of and what their responsibilities are. Again, I think that the former grading scale definitely punished and hurt students maybe from poverty, students who have less resources, students from those kind of backgrounds could definitely be challenged in a grading system that rewarded behaviors that I think are a little bit harder to achieve in those categories, including our special ed population. And by creating a more balanced system this way and rules for teachers to apply, and also spelling out student expectations, I feel as though the end result would move our district forward and make the school just a space that's more inviting and welcoming to all, but also more equitable and fair as well. Thank you.